it's very easy to think that it's all just the same. Investing is just buying some shares on a stock market, but actually it's a lot more than that. The investment philosophy that drives any particular provider should really align with your own kind of personal philosophy.
Welcome back to another episode of a Kiwi Original. This is episode 11, and today on the show I have Diana Papadopoulos, a marketing strategist at Booster Financial Services. This is one of those companies that sits behind one of the most iconic things that New Zealand has created over the last 10 or 20 years, which is Kiwi Saver. So we're going to be talking about the thing that matters to the economy and actually matters to us personally, which is having cash in our pockets and also having cash for a rainy day. So welcome, Diana. Great to have you on a Kiwi Original.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess first question is, what does Booster Financial Services do? What's the role of the company, and what are some of the financial products you offer to customers?
Yeah, sure thing. So Booster was founded about 20 years ago now, and so things have changed significantly during that time. When we first started, we were just a small technology platform supporting a group of financial advisors who were managing their clients' individual wealth. Of course, the great thing that happened in New Zealand was Kiwi Saver came along, and that made investing accessible for everyone, regardless of how much money you had. And so most of what we do today is Kiwi Saver funds. We still offer other investment funds as well. And on top of that, we've got a lot of tools and resources that just generally help people get on top of their financial game.
And in terms of what Kiwis like to invest in, we know that there is a love affair with property in New Zealand. What's your experience at the time you've been with Booster in terms of how Kiwis are investing in non-property assets like shares, which underpin a lot of the investment allocation for KiwiSaver?
Yeah, so I don't think that the Kiwi love affair with property is ever going to go away. And, for good reason, a lot of people, feel that they've done very well investing in property. I guess what we're seeing now, though, is that times are changing. And for a lot of particularly young New Zealanders, property investment, even to buy their own home, isn't becoming such a realistic goal anymore. And so with that, you're definitely seeing people more interested and willing to invest into other areas. So, often shares. The other thing that we've seen is we've set up an investment fund. It's called our Private Land and Property Fund. And so what this is an opportunity for people who still love the idea of investing in property to do that, but with a slightly different slant. And so instead of investing into residential property, it invests into commercial or agricultural property. And people can invest in that. They only need $1,000 to get started. So for us, we're looking at, different ways to work with that, that innate Kiwi need to invest in something that we can kind of see, feel, and touch, but exposing them to a wider range of assets.
That's interesting. So you can still get access to a property allocation in your saving without necessarily having to have $500,000 or $1 million or a mortgage to be able to get access to that. Who are some of your customers?
So we span the width and breadth of New Zealand. With the property fund I was just talking about, we have literally got people who are in their retirement investing into that right now because they see it as a good way to earn a little bit of income. And we have got people who are either still saving for their first home or have decided that they're not interested in doing that. They're in their 20s and they're investing into that fund. Across our KiwiSaver funds, of course, it goes the whole way from kids right through to people who are well into their retirement years, and they're just using it as a way to keep growing their savings, because for a lot of people, they might have hit 65. Technically, they can retire, but they're not planning to do so anytime soon. So they want to keep, investing and growing their money.
And so for those customers, before they become customers, what are some of the things that Kiwi should be considering before choosing someone to look after their own money? Like, it's when it's in your own bank account and it's yours, you can kind of put your arms around it and say, this is mine. But to give it to someone else that maybe you haven't seen or you don't trust, how do you, when all the numbers look the same, or how do you make that choice from going from, okay, it's my money in my bank account, to still being mine, but someone else is looking after it for me?
Yeah, I think you've raised a really good point there, which is that, what you're doing is handing it over as such for somebody to look after. But it is also important to recognise that in New Zealand, if you invest into either a KiwiSaver fund or another managed fund, that money's held in trust. So even if something happened to the manager of that fund, your money is held in trust. So there's a level of security there that means it's not just going to disappear. It's very different to, literally handing your cash over and somebody could run off and do whatever they want with it. The thing I would say, and this is what I say to, friends and family, is have a look at the people behind the organisation and what their ethos is. Because I think, it's very easy to think that it's all just the same, investing is just buying some shares on a stock market. But actually, it's a lot more than that. And the investment philosophy that drives any particular provider should really align with your own kind of personal philosophy. So for us at Booster, because we are Kiwi born and bred, we were founded here in Wellington, we've got a real affinity for the country. So with our investment philosophy, we clearly invest in a diversified manner across, global shares and bonds and, stocks. But what we have is a New Zealand slant, which means we invest into New Zealand companies because we could see that they were these are unlisted companies that they'd often be starved of capital. They really needed to grow, but the only way to do that was often to sell out to maybe an overseas conglomerate. And so we started investing into those companies so they could maintain their Kiwi ownership. And more importantly, Kiwi investors that would usually never be able to invest into that kind of thing got the opportunity to do that. So that's just one example from us in terms of how our investment philosophy drives what you can get from us as a provider. And so that's why I just encourage people just to dig a little bit deeper.
So that's interesting. And that's probably advice I should have taken up prior to getting into KiwiSaver. I went with an old childhood friend, Nick Stewart from Stewart Financial Group, and only realized, 6 or 7 years later when I got the Buy New Zealand Made role, that the underlying infrastructure was provided by Booster Financial Services. So I got the app, I could check my balance through the app. So all of these things that where those features were actually different to the reason that I chose Nick as someone that I trusted over 2 or 3 decades of my life. So that's interesting that you say it's more than just choosing stocks on the stock market. You have to think about who those people are. So how do you, because you're a marketing strategist for Booster, then how do you get your people and your names out there so that people can make those assessments?
So for us, a lot comes down to word of mouth, and our customers are our biggest advocates. And so usually we will get new clients because somebody has recommended us. So we do try to find ways to make it easier for people to talk about us. And we find that, I guess, really good quality content is often the way to go. So giving people shareable content that they do want to pass on to friends and family really helps promote those conversations. The other thing that we've done in recent times is we've really opened up our story internally on social media. So we've got a lot of our people right now posting videos pretty regularly, just talking about what we do and why it's important to them. And we've found our engagement rates have been really, really high. And I guess what that talks to is this is an area where you don't often see the people side of businesses like ours, because people put up, a very professional front, but that can sometimes be a little bit cold. And so what we're doing by showing the real people behind the business seems to be going down really well. And people like to understand that, because at the end of the day, you are trusting us with your money.
It's super smart, and it's a reason why anyone who was early with social media did well, is because people to people works. The only reason that brands came along was when you, back in the super old days, like 19th century, was when you were trying to get goods to more people outside of your village. how could someone know that your goods were from you versus from another trader? And so this idea of having a logo and then a brand represented the consistency of that particular product. But now we're almost going full circle, which is the need for a brand to introduce its people has never been greater. So you get that trust back again.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, for marketers the world over, the challenge becomes then, if you've got a brand and you're trying to invest in it, and then you're heroing your people, actually your organizational culture and your ability to keep people and to retain really good people is incredibly important. And I guess, the larger you get, the harder that becomes. So, for us, the brand isn't just a brand. It's actually about, our ethos as a company, and it's how, I guess, we live our lives. And when we're hiring, we look for people who buy into that and truly believe in it, because what we've found is that those people will stay with us, and they're just so integral to who we are and what our brand is.
I never thought that HR would be marketing, but it's becoming so in certain industries. You also mentioned there that content is big for you, shareable content. What are some of the marketing challenges that are unique to financial services that some of the marketers maybe listening to this hadn't considered that you've got to consider in terms of regulation or permissions and privacy and so on?
Yeah, so I guess we struggle with all the same things that other marketers do, but on top of that, the additional challenge for us is a heavy layer of regulation. Now, most of the regulation is actually pretty sensible and straightforward, but what it means is that we do need to be very careful when we're talking about what we do, not to step too far into giving somebody personal advice on their situation, because of course if you're pushing out some content which is general in its nature, you want to make sure that people don't think that applies to them, because clearly we don't know every detail of their personal situation when we're writing that content. So for us, I guess the approach there is really to open up and share our knowledge, because the team are very experienced in what they do. So we try to be really open with that knowledge, but always encourage people just to give us a call if they want to go deeper, so that we can actually talk to them about their personal situation, and be more specific for them. And generally that means, sitting down with a financial advisor and really working through the detail if they need to.
Sorry to interrupt. This won't take long. Subscribe to the show and you'll never miss another one of these amazing episodes. Right, back to the show. And given what's going on at the moment in terms of the gyrations on the money market, what should your existing customers be doing that's different, and what is best money practice that should always stand the test of time no matter what's going on in the markets?
Yeah, so I guess the key thing that people can do is not panic. So, there was plenty of that, particularly fueled by media reports about KiwiSaver balances going down when the markets really first started to get jittery. Now, of course, the thing about that is it's not necessarily all that helpful, because it creates people, this need in people to do something, when actually, for most people, the best thing they can do is sit back, watch and write it out. For most people in KiwiSaver, they're not going to need to get their money out until, they're at least 65. And for the vast majority of people in KiwiSaver, that's still some time off yet. So they've got time to ride out this little bump in the road. Now, how big that bump's going to be and how long it's going to take, none of us know. And if anyone tells you that they do, I'd be quietly suspicious. But the most important thing you can do is, first of all, just check that you're in the right fund for your time frame. So if you're not taking your money out for another 20 years, make sure that you're in the fund that matches that time horizon. And then try not to look at it too often. If it's going to freak you out, seeing it bouncing all over the place, it's best not to look at it every day. And the key is just to, have a review once every couple of years to make sure that nothing has changed in your situation. And if it hasn't, then the fund that you're in should see you through just fine.
And I think it's having those different considerations of people's personal circumstances. If there's someone that thinks, actually, I feel better just having a bit more cash on hand and maybe keep more cash on hand. But if you've got a 20-year horizon, that share that cost $1 now costs 80 cents is actually at a discount. So maybe you could look at it. My personal view is, if you have a long-term horizon, is just look at it like a Briscoe sale, except in 20 years you'll be able to sell those Briscoe things you buy back for a substantial sum of money.
Yeah, and I mean, that has been our message to our members. If somebody has called in and they've been concerned and say they're in a high growth fund and they're thinking that maybe they need to move to, a more conservative fund, we ask them just to really stop and think about that, because, ultimately what they can end up doing is crystallizing their losses. Whereas if you just, I guess, change your mindset a little bit and think about this as an opportunity and say, well, right now, let's say a stock used to cost $1 to buy. If it now costs 80 cents to buy, but your pay is still going in as it always has, you're buying more, you're getting more for your money. So, it's just a time for a little bit of calm, really.
Have you seen a lot of inquiries from call centers, emails, chats online?
Yeah, so we have definitely had a whole lot more people giving us a call or emailing, just, really thinking about what do they do? Do they need to do anything? We are very fortunate in that we work with a network of financial advisors around the country. And so our clients, because we work with those financial advisors, tend to be far better, I guess, educated and understand what's going on. And equally, their first port of call is usually their advisor who helps them through it.
And that's the great thing by being a New Zealand-based financial services company with those regional financial advisors, is you're actually getting through to the person you trust. There's not some massive call center overseas that you're trying to negotiate or navigate your way through to get an answer. You've actually got the people in country that know what's happening in New Zealand right now.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, right now, every Wednesday morning, we get on a webinar with our research team, who are the analysts and the people that are out there looking at the markets every day. And that team sit there with the financial advisors and take them through, what we're seeing. And financial advisors likewise are sharing their experiences of how clients are feeling and what they're seeing going on, and also giving us challenge around, and what their observations are of the market. And so, by sharing that knowledge, it means that you really have got, the best information you could possibly have right there available for everyday people on the street.
Nice. And just to change tack a little bit here, you're working at Booster Financial Services now. What do you get excited about working in the financial services industry, looking after New Zealand KiwiSaver and nest eggs of Kiwis?
So I joined Booster nearly 5 years ago now. In July, it will have been 5 years. And I guess the thing that gets me out of bed every morning and gets me excited about coming to work is the fact that I think we truly are in a position where we can make a real difference for real people. So our whole brand is built on the idea of helping people get on the financial front foot. And so it's far more than just saving for your retirement. What we're trying to do is to help people, I guess, get on top of their game with their day-to-day finances, and then knowing that, we will be looking after their retirement savings for the long term. So one of the things that we've launched recently is a budgeting tool. And so what that allows people to do is it automates all of their transactions. It pulls it together, it categorizes it for them, and then they can see where they're spending their money, and also where they could potentially make the biggest savings. And then they can set targets and goals and the like. And for me, that is what is hugely motivating, is the ability to, I guess, pull together all the smarts and the technology to provide something free for our members that really can help them, put aside a little bit to get through the tougher times, while also saving for that longer term.
I really like that, because what you're doing there is helping them see where potentially wasted money is going, or spare money, for those that are thinking, actually, I don't have any wasted or spare money. Well, until you track it, you're not necessarily sure. So let's make sure that we'll put in the show notes the link to that calculator. Is that available to non-members as well, or just Booster members?
So at the moment, it's only available to Booster members, but watch this space.
All right. I think that's a good lead gen tool right there. Very good. Well, thank you very much, Diana, for being on a Kiwi Original and sharing kind of a little bit more behind the scenes of what Booster Financial Service is all about, and the people-centered approach that you're taking towards getting New Zealand customers, and for giving a little bit of, I think, assurity at this time where people are a little bit more concerned about what's happening with cash and with the economy. And I think it's really reassuring to hear that markets do have ups and downs, and that over the long term, I think there was a graph I looked at recently, and it showed some of our like worst crashes, like 87, 1929, and it showed that within 500 days of trading, all of those that had dropped 30 or 40% had all gone beyond getting back their 30% and further. So it does take a little bit of a steel gut to be able to get through some of this, or as I've seen some in the media say, just don't look at it.
Yeah, that's right. We're not saying it's not a tough time. It will be a tough time for many financially through this next period, and it definitely will be difficult for others just watching, their investment balances. But like you say, I've got a chart very similar to the one that you've just described, and history has taught us that markets do recover over time, and so it's just about holding your nerve.
And I think in the meantime, that budget tool sounds amazing. So we will be watching this space.
I'll keep you posted.
Well, thanks, Diana, and appreciate your time. This has been a Kiwi Original brought to you by the New Zealand Made team. Thanks for watching. The New Zealand Made trademark is used by over 1,200 businesses in New Zealand. The New Zealand Made team licenses that trademark. Check if you're eligible at bynz.org.nz. If you feel that someone should see this, share it with them now. Otherwise, subscribe to youtube.com/bynzmade, and we'll see you on the next episode.